Hey there. Welcome back to the Broken Man Fixed. I'm Brian. So when I started doing this, I kind of did it as like I wanted to do like a journal of like what I'm currently doing, and then share like some thoughts and stuff like that I had, and and with that, trying to come up with ideas. Sometimes it's like hard. It's almost like that writer's block that you hear about. But so when I was wanting to do this next video, I was like, man, I'm not really sure what I'm really wanting to do. I'm like, there's a lot of stuff in the world going on politics wise. Maybe I should do something on that and what my thoughts are. Or just don't really know. But then like inspiration hits like inspiration does, and I don't want to sound like some hippie, like, oh my God, I was just inspired. But so I was scrolling through Facebook, and there was a post that popped up. It was posted like 2 weeks ago, but how Facebook will randomly pop stuff up on you. And it was a post from one of my old football coaches from high school, and he's now a fishing coach at the school, which, by the way, I don't know when y'all got fishing. That ain't fair. That would have been awesome to have when I was in school. But anyways, so he was just doing what a good coach does, and he was posting pictures of his kids, his boys, and what they had done at their last little tournament and stuff that they were doing. And it got me to thinking about the impact that teachers have had in my life, and the impact that teachers had, period, across the board. Now we always hear, like here especially lately, we hear lots of negative stuff about teachers. Lots of negative stuff. Every time there's a news post about a teacher who had inappropriate contact with a student, or then you hear like the political side of it, and you hear people all the time, oh, teachers are just trying to indoctrinate children and this, that, and the other. And I'm not going to lie and say that stuff doesn't happen, because we know for a fact it does, but the propensity of it happening is insanely small. It's a very, very small percentage. You just hear about it. The vast majority of teachers in this country are some of the most selfless people that you're ever going to meet, and they give so much. They give so much. They truly love kids, and they want to foster growth, and they just want to see you succeed so bad. And for several kids, like me, like when I was a kid, I had an absolutely just terrible home life. My only safety and security at times was in school. And there's many kids in the country that are like that. And for kids like me, the only respect, encouragement, uplifting, support, and love that you received from adult figures was either coaches, teachers, youth group leaders at churches, friends of your parents, or parents of your friends, that kind of stuff. And teachers were a big one. Now I went to Republic High School in Republic, Missouri, which was an absolutely amazing school. Amazing school full of amazing, dedicated educators. These were truly builders of people, and they loved their students. They did everything they could to make them succeed. Honestly, I look back and I think that if not for the positive interactions that I had with some teachers that, turned out to be role models, that I probably would have wound up a statistic, on drugs, in jail, dead, whatever. But they took the time to show me the beauty in utilizing my mind and my talents and breaking down my walls of self-doubt and fear, so that I could just grow. And I can't ever thank them for that. And what's crazy is the vast majority of teachers in this world will never, ever, ever know the impact that they really had. And now they don't affect every single kid. I wish you could say that they do, but they don't. But for every teacher out there that gives so much of themselves and everything that they do, if they can affect a positive change in just one kid's life, the butterfly effect from that is just like you wouldn't believe. You're saving one kid from being in the system, and then that kid's family is going to be a good, healthy family, and you're saving them from the system, and you're breaking that systemic revolving door aspect of the backgrounds that some of these kids come from. And it's only the teachers who can do that, who show them the love, and they show them that they are valuable. And so, after seeing Coach post that on there, and it just got me thinking about it, I wanted to make a post about that. And so I wanted to share with you some of the people that I had an interaction with when I was in high school, that at what was one of the worst times of my life were bright spots. I wasn't one of those kids that hated going to school. I loved going to school because school was safe, and it was all due to my educators. And so, like I said, I'm going to start off talking about a few of them. And the first one, he was one in a million individuals. He wasn't Mr. Jones. It wasn't Mrs. Davis. It wasn't Mr. Robinson. He was just T Smith. That was his name, T Smith. I don't know that I ever heard anybody ever call him Mr. Smith. He was T Smith. And T taught history. And he was such an amazing wealth of knowledge when it come to history. He had a mind like a steel trap for it. And his historical recollection was just, honestly, I don't know that I've ever met anybody who could just quickly recall historical facts the way that he could. He was an amazing individual, and he would shared with everybody his life, and what he had gone through. And I don't think any person whatsoever who ever went to Republic High School would ever have a negative thing to say about T. Smith. And probably if you went there right now, you're probably smiling a little bit just thinking about the old guy. He had been a boxing champion in the Navy, if I remember correctly, and I think he had been in Vietnam, if I remember. I know for a fact he had been to Woodstock, because we talked about that. And he was so incredibly intelligent. And like I said, it didn't matter if it was American history, if it was world history, if it was ancient world history. It was all right there. It was all right there and fresh. And the ironic thing about that was he couldn't remember your name. Like he had nicknames for everybody, but he didn't remember your name. Either that or he just chose not to remember your name, and he'd give you nicknames. I was Gigantor, and I was Manchild. And so, yeah. And God, was he funny. Oh my God, was he funny. I remember one day we were watching a movie called, I think it was Ivanhoe, like Viking warriors type thing from way back in the day. And there's one good fight scene that's going on there, and I'm kind of sitting in the front row, and he looks over at me. He's got his hands put up behind his head, and he's like, "Hey there, man-child. That's my ex-wife up on the screen. The old battle axe." He had like the greatest laugh that you've ever heard, and it was like the most unique laugh, but it was his laugh. And I don't know if I even just did that justice or not, but my God, that's how I remember his laugh. And it was loud, and it was bellowing, and that was just him. And in his class, I don't ever remember you opening up a history book. He would sit there, and he would dictate out of his head, and you would take notes, diligent notes, and you would just write down every single thing that he told you, because test time was open notes, and it would go follow right along with there. Because he was so smart with that. And I started to really like history at that point. And I'd ask him for like some tutoring stuff, and I'd sit after class with him, and we would talk about, after school, and we'd talk about history, and we would do all this. And he really, really, really fostered a love inside of me for history. Even so much that one of my degrees is in contemporary American history. And it was because of the love that he saw, his love for history that he, helped grow in me. And to this day, when I'm watching, if I'm watching like an old war movie or something like that, or if I'm doing some studying on some, personal studying on historical facts, I just have to think about the old guy. I just have to think about him and stuff. And I'd heard he passed away a couple of years ago. And he's one that I wonder, truly, if he knows the impact that he had, the positive impact that he had in people's lives. But, maybe someday I'll get to see him again, and we can sit down and we can share some history and just talk, and I can get called Gigantor one more time. But moving on. So at our high school, we also had this amazing lady. She was our art teacher. A wonderful sprite of a woman with red hair. She was older. I think she was a hippie. Now that I look back, I'm like, she was a hippie. She was such a free spirit. Mrs. Weeby. Another teacher that I don't know that anybody ever has had a negative thing to say about her whatsoever. Everybody loved her and loved her class. I mean, so much so that if you didn't have a class, you just go in there and hang out with her. And she had so much fun, and she would dance around the room, and she would sing, and she would just be goofy, and she was just a bright spot. And for a kid like me, who outside of the home, the vast majority of my interactions with adults were very, very negative. Not her, man. No, she was literally a light. She was just an amazingly beautiful spirit in person. And me, I've always loved art ever since I was a little kid. I used to like to draw and paint and do all this stuff, but man, I was always really timid and self-conscious, and had anxiety even back then. And she would work with me through that, and she would help me to be able to see things or look at things through a different perspective without the fear of what people may judge on the way that I was, handling a project or something like that. And she just made me better. And I think about her a lot. Every time I draw, I think about her. If I'm just sketching or something like that, I think about her. And I can picture her dancing around that room. And yeah, I miss her. I don't know if she's still with us or not. If she's not, I guarantee you that woman's in heaven. There's been very few people on this planet who are more deserving of their angelic wings than what she was. She's a saint. And so from there, I guess I'm gonna move on to one of my coaches that I had, the old ball coach, Coach Miller. Big Ed, Big E. Coach was a coach. He was a man's coach. He was an old school coach. He was a very stoic figure. Very, very stoic figure. And he had a command presence like you wouldn't believe. And for all of us boys that played for him, we would just kill ourselves for him because we respected the man so much. And I don't know, I know he never yelled at me whatsoever. I don't think he ever raised his voice at anybody that I know of that I ever saw. And he didn't have to, because he would get you to do what he wanted by being a good coach. And if you failed him, boy, did you hate yourself because you let coach down. He was the general. He literally was the general. He was our Patton, and he was also my wrestling coach, and he was the PE coach in the school and stuff like that. Great man. On occasion, he would open up and let you in. He would talk to you about his family and stuff like that. And he was very, very dedicated to his family. And he showed me that to be a leader of men was not yelling and screaming or anything else like that. You didn't have to do that to get men to do what you wanted to do. And to this day, that's kind of how I like to treat people as well, because of him. So from that coach, I'm going to move on to my all-time favorite coach, the fellow I was talking about earlier in the video, Coach Jim Houston. Coach Houston was absolutely my favorite coach that I've ever had in my entire life in any level of sports. Houston was literally what you think of when you picture a football coach from like the late 80s, early 90s. I mean, he had the 3-stripe socks that would come up to your calves, and those like bike coaching shorts that they had with like the 2 buttons on the front with like polo tucked into it, the handlebar mustache, the Oakley blades. And damn, was he a good coach. Oh my God, he was a good coach. He could get so much out of you, and if you weren't living up to your potential, if you literally weren't living up to your potential, he'd light a fire in you. But if you were doing everything that you could and it still wasn't enough to win, you didn't get chastised. He knew. He could see that you were trying your hardest, and it just sometimes when you try your hardest, you don't win. And he knew it. And he would be there to pick you up and support you and just tell you, I'm proud of you. You're doing the best you can. On occasion, I see him, I've ran into him at church a couple of times and this, that, and the other. And to this day, I still have just such an admiration and a respect for this man. He was a hell of a good teacher. Absolutely great teacher. Loved his classes. And everybody loved him. Every single one of his players loved him. And for a kid like me who was craving that love from an older male to just to put his arms around you and tell you, I know it's tough, but I got you. You're doing good. I got you. That was him. He was that guy. Once again, he's another one that I don't know if he will ever truly know the impact that he had on people. But for me, Coach, yeah, you did. You showed a young, scared kid with a terrible home life. You showed him love. You showed him respect, and you showed him self-value. Can't ever thank you enough for it. After Coach, man, I'll tell you, let's talk about math. Math was my worst subject in school. Absolutely, I sucked at math. I've got something wrong with my brain to where numbers, like if I'm looking at numbers on paper and stuff like that, they just all jumble up and they don't make any sense. And I would fail. I failed math terribly. Was horrible at it. And I had a teacher named Wayne Jones, Mr. Jones. Jonesy was cool. He was absolutely a killer teacher. And for me, when I got a failing grade at school, I got beat. Let's just be honest. I got beat. You come home and you get a beating. You take a lot of beatings. And so I'd go into class like doing math and stuff like that, and my anxiety would be so up because I know no matter how hard I try, I'm not going to get this right. I'm going to fail, and it's going to wind up in me getting the shit kicked out of me. Happens. Jonesy one day, probably it was my sophomore year, I think, he asked me to come by after school one day and talk to him. And me and him sat there for like 2 hours and he was talking about not even so much as math. Like, he started off asking me about like areas, the why I have problems with it and stuff. And I can't make any sense of this. Equations don't make sense to me. Decimals don't make sense. Fractions don't make sense. And so then he started to talk to me about my hobbies, and I've always loved to build things. I've got a very mechanical brain. Always loved to build things and stuff like that. And so he started to work with me on how to change the math problems that we were working into like shop math. So instead of just blank fractions on a paper, it was, this is a fraction of an inch or a fraction of a yard, or this is this many millimeters or decimeters, or he would convert it over to the timing on like a small block Chevy on how you set that. Things that made sense to me. And once he did that and he was able to unlock that inside my brain on how I could do that, I could transfer all that stuff that was on paper into something that made sense inside my head. And that wound up in me getting better grades, which meant I got less beatings. Jonesy will never know that he kept me from getting less beatings. He took 2 hours out of his time and then countless hours during the school year just to work with me on stuff. And he protected me from a beating. Plus, he made me better at math. To this day, I think of things in the shop math. When I'm doing anything, I think of it in shop math, and I'm able to get through it. And it's all because of Jonesy. Pretty cool dude. Yeah, I heard a saying a long time ago, as we move on to the next one. I heard a saying a long time ago that every songbird always has a smile in its heart. And we had a songbird at my school, and her name was Mrs. Phillips. Mrs. Phillips was a choir teacher. One of the most kind and soft people I've ever met in my entire life. She was a pure spirit, beautiful person. She loved what she did, and she had this amazing ability to take the most self-conscious kid who was just so timid about that, because that's a very hard thing when you're a kid, to sing in front of other people and to do that stuff. And she knew how to break down those barriers and to get the absolute best out of you. And for a kid like me, who was only ever told at home to shut your mouth and be quiet, she showed me the power that was in my voice and what I could do with it. I saw not long ago that she passed away as well. And, the school made a Facebook post about her, and one of the greatest things in the world is when you go through and you read all the comments from past students. I mean, there's ones that I knew, but there's people that I didn't know from grades before me, grades after, people I'll never even know. And all of them had the exact same thing to say. Just how much of an amazing, wonderful educator she was. And she's another one that I wonder, do you truly know? Did she truly know what she did for all of us kids? She's an angel. And I mean, that's funny because I literally envision her right now up in heaven with a whole choir full of angels, and she's got them hitting perfect key, perfect pitch. She was awesome. She was absolutely awesome. We'll move on now to one of my all-time favorite classes, which was shop class. We had a shop teacher named Mr. Headley, and Headley was cool. Headley was young. He was cool. He wasn't typical old man. He wasn't what you picture when you think of shop teachers, like the old guy with the Bob Vila stuff on and he's missing 3 fingers or something like that. Nah, dude, Headley, he listened to our music and he got our jokes and our movie references, and he was kind of like one of us. He was cool. He was cool, and his class was awesome. His class was not your typical, we're going to build a birdhouse or we're going to build a lampshade or something like that. You never knew in there. I mean, one day you'd be building submarines and the next day you're building rockets. At a time when computers were first starting to come into schools, he had one of the very first ever computerized flight simulators that you could go in there. You could do that, and he had a program on there where you would design cars for aerodynamics, and you could learn how aerodynamics through a wind tunnel and stuff worked on a car. And with me having that mechanical brain, I loved it. Absolutely loved it. He did something for me as well, because my home life, a car breaks down or something breaks and you have to help. God forbid you bring the wrong size box end wrench, because you're going to get cussed out for it. Or you're going to get smacked across the back of the head because you accidentally brought a 3/8 inch ratchet when you were supposed to bring a 1/4 inch ratchet. Or you'll get whipped across the legs with a car antenna because you weren't holding the flashlight right. Not with Headley. There was no yelling, there was no screaming, there was no breaking, there was no hitting, there wasn't any of that stuff. He would just encourage you. He would just encourage you. And if you hit a stone wall, or if something didn't go right, instead of yelling and throwing things and screaming and breaking and this, that, and the other, he'd just be like, let's just take a step back and let's just think for a second. Let's try it again. And if that didn't work, we'll do it again. Let's just try it again. Let's just try it again. And then when you were able to do it, he would give you so much praise. And on top of that, you learned so much from yourself. You learned how to fix a problem. You learned how to fix an issue and solve it. And you learned the value in that. And that's a value that I carry today. Now, to this day, if something breaks on my vehicle or something breaks in the house, and I fix it. I know how to fix it. I've got that brain that I can do it. And if I can't fix it, if I have to call somebody to come do it, I take that as a personal insult to my manhood. And that was Headley, man. He just super cool. Super, super cool. Just amazingly uplifting. So those were my teachers in my school. Now, when you're a kid, you have other role models as well. And, you know, there's volunteers, you know, scout leaders, you know, church leaders, everything else like that. And then on occasion, you have people who become some of the most important parental figures in your life, and they're not your parent, they're not your coach, they're not your teacher, or anything else like that. Mine, it was my best friend's parents. And all throughout high school and everything else like that, they were the most important people to me that there was. They were more important to me than my parents were, because my parents were terrible. They weren't. She was a banker and he's an electrician. Dave and Joyce Schmidt. Literally, you'd go over to their house and it was like something you saw on TV. Oh my God, they loved each other. Oh, Dave and Joyce loved each other. And you knew that just being around them. Treated their kids with respect. And they were a family. They were literally a TV family. And for a kid like me who didn't have any of that stuff, they allowed me to be a part of that. I'd get to go on family outings. We'd go to a church with them. I was constantly staying the night over at their house. I was probably at their house more than I was at mine. Like family dinners, like actual real sit down at the table family dinners, you know, yeah. But that was just who they were. And they took me in at a time where I needed that. I needed to see what a good loving home was. And I got to be a part of it. And I don't know if they know for sure the total complexities of what was going on in my home, but I'm pretty sure they may have had somewhat of an idea. To this day, I still remember there was one day that me and my stepdad had gotten into it particularly bad, and he teed off on me, and I'm not gonna lie, he fucked me up pretty bad. I mean, he beat shit out of me, and I ran out of the house crying. I think I was 15 at the time. And Dave and them, they lived probably a mile as a crow flies from us. I ran out of the house and ran over to my buddy's house to because I just wanted to go see him. You know how it is when you're stuff that's going on, you just need your best friend. And we didn't have cell phones back then, so it's not like you could just call and be like, oh, I'm coming over. So you just showed up. And so I ran over there, and Dave comes and answers the door, and he said, well, he's not here. He's out with his mom and his brother and his sister. And I was, okay, so I was getting ready to leave and go back, and Dave could see something was wrong. He could see something was wrong. And he asked me, he put his arm around me, you okay? Started to cry. And he took me inside and sat down on the couch with me, and he just sat there with me while I cried and cried and cried. Because at 15 years old, a kid should not be terrified to be at home. A kid shouldn't be getting beaten up by a middle-aged man or anything else like that. That guy should be showing him what it is to be a man and what he's going to need to do in his life. I didn't get that, but I got that from Dave. And I, to this day, hold both of them in the highest regard as two of the greatest people I've ever met in my entire life, and I've ever been blessed with in my life. And God put them in my life at a time that He knew I needed something like that. I literally can never thank them enough for what they've done and what they did back then, and what they did with me, was just by showing love and showing support to me and stuff like that. And with me seeing what they had, and I knew I could have something better, and I could be something better, and it was because of them, you know. And so in conclusion, those are just some of the people who took the time to just invest in a troubled kid and protect that troubled kid from just all the terrible darknesses of the world. And they did it. They taught me how to grow. They taught me how to come out of my shell and to be who I truly was, and to find the love for things such as art and such as music and shop and math and everything else. They taught me how to be a leader. They taught me how to be a team player. They taught me how to win. They taught me how to lose. They taught me how to handle loss. And teachers don't get enough recognition for what they do and the effects that they have on kids. Like I said, they are many times the only bright spot that is in the life of some of these kids. School sometimes for these kids is the only meal that they're ever going to eat. And then, in the summertime where they're not in school, it's terrible. Most kids get excited about summer break because they're not going to school. But for kids growing up like me, you dreaded summer break because you were going to be home with that all day long. You didn't have the respite of school to save you and protect you, and even for just a few hours a day, tell you how good you were when all you were ever told is how terrible you were. We see all the time, like military personnel, law enforcement, firefighters, doctors, EMTs, nurses, and how they get touted on for being heroes, for saving people's lives and everything else like that. But nobody ever thinks about the lives that a teacher saves. It doesn't ever cross their mind. Because if not for some of these teachers who are investing their own time and their own money into some of these troubled kids to get them to turn a corner, these kids wind up dead. I mean, I know that from my life as a law enforcement officer. If it wasn't for the teachers, the coaches, volunteers, church leaders, best friends' parents, there'd be a lot of kids dead or in the system that shouldn't be, or that, and they don't get the praise that they're deserved. So they don't get called heroes. All they do is they get lumped into a group of everybody else when a teacher decides to spew their political beliefs or decides to become a child molester. And that ain't them. Teachers are heroes. So that's all the thoughts I got on this one for today. I hope you like this one. Yeah. Remember, as always, if you support me, I'll support you, and we can support each other. And when you go out in the world today, make this world a better place. Do it. Find a reason to smile about something today and be the reason that a stranger smiles. Take 5 seconds to make somebody else's life brighter. You never know what anybody's going through. Just a simple hi, just a simple how are you. If you see somebody struggling and they just look like they need a hug, even if they're a stranger, you doing okay, you need a hug. That's how we can affect change in this world. That is literally how we can take this terrible world that we live in and we can make it better. Make the world better, friends. I love you. We'll see you next time.